Thank you for joining today's session. We will be getting started shortly. We do have a lot of folks signed up for today's session, and we want to give everyone a moment to log on and get connected so that we can dive into today's session. I do want to thank you all for joining us today. I am Jasmine Garrett here with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. Today's session is an informational overview on NJ LEAF, the New Jersey Lending for Equity Access and Financing Program. A quick housekeeping note, we do suspect that many questions will be answered in today's presentation. However, you are able to write in questions at any point during the presentation using Zoom's Q&A feature. It is one of your Zoom command options and will allow us to make sure we are able to get back to you and let others see these questions and answers as well. Today's session is being recorded and will also be posted on our NJEDA and YouTube pages. The slides and other resources will also be available in the next few days. Now, to get us started with the presentation, I will shift things over to NJEDA's Director of Business Banking, Naima Marshall. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're really glad to see such a really great interest in the NJ Leaf Loan Program. This session is meant to give you a good understanding of how the program works, what we're looking for in applicants, and how you can best prepare to apply. As many of you know, access to capital continues to be one of the biggest challenges facing cannabis businesses. Traditional financing options are limited, and that creates real barriers for businesses that are otherwise ready to grow. The NJ Leaf program was designed to directly address that gap. This is a pilot loan program focused on providing low-cost financing to cultivators, manufacturers, and testing labs so they can scale their operations, invest in their facilities and equipment, and create jobs here in New Jersey. So this is just another great step forward for NJEDA, complementing our other cannabis products and our loan products that we've been offering for many decades now. We're continuing to build out tools that support a more inclusive and sustainable economy, making sure that businesses in emerging industries like cannabis have access to the resources they need to compete and succeed. So during today's session, we want to make sure that by the time you leave, you understand the eligibility requirements, you have a clear picture of the loan structure and terms, and most importantly, you know what a complete application looks like. Because one of the biggest drivers in this program will be coming prepared for application submission. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan, who will start the process of walking you through the program in more detail, starting with the overview and then project eligibility requirements.
Awesome. Thanks, Nye. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join today. So I'm going to get started just going over the overall purpose of NJ Leaf. We're very excited to get this one launched. We're going to be launching on Monday, 4/20 at 10 a.m. Applications are going to be open. This is a pilot loan program that offers low-cost financing to eligible recreational cannabis cultivators, manufacturers, and testing laboratories in New Jersey that have received their annual licensed digital card as per the final recommendation issued by NJCRC. This initiative addresses the critical financing gap faced by New Jersey cannabis entrepreneurs due to federal banking regulations, enabling them to create jobs, scale their business, and compete in a rapidly growing industry. This is a loan, so there are going to be repayment features to this product. We have a total funding amount of $15 million approved by board through our Economic Recovery Fund. 5% of that, which is going to equate to about $750,000, is going to be reserved for applicant businesses that are located in eligible impact zones designated by NJCRC. The use of funding for this loan product is going to allow for financing for equipment, real estate, and also working capital. We're going to have loan amounts going from a minimum of $100,000 up to $1.5 million. So starting out with eligibility qualifications for the loan program, starting with licensing and compliance. The first is going to be, in order to be eligible for NJ Leaf, you're going to need to possess a valid recreational annual digital license card issued by CRC. This program is going to be eligible for license types of a Class 1 cannabis cultivator, a Class 2 cannabis manufacturer, or a cannabis testing laboratory. So you would need to have an annual digital license card approved in one of those three license types. Side note, medicinal only alternative treatment centers and medicinal testing labs would not be eligible. In addition, prior to approval, we are also going to need a valid New Jersey tax clearance certificate. And the business must be in good standing with the EDA, CRC, Department of Labor, and NJDEP. As far as business and operations, the business must be based in New Jersey and operate from a licensed New Jersey location. As far as time and operation, to be eligible, you're going to need to have at least one full calendar year in operation prior to the date of the application. So one full calendar year in operation, we're looking at generating revenue and incurring expenses for at least 12 months. During the application process, we're also going to be, in order to verify that, looking for at least one full year tax return demonstrating that 12 months in operation. So we're going to need at least one full year tax return as well. Annual gross revenue has to be less than 5 million, and that's going to be based off the most recent federal business return filed. In addition to being less than 5 million in annual revenue, the business must also have fewer than 250 full-time employees, and that's going to be across all locations, whether it's in or outside of New Jersey. Across all locations, less than 250 full-time employees. There is going to be a job component required for the program, which is either the commitment of retaining or creating at least one full-time W-2 New Jersey job per 65,000 of NJEDA loan exposure within 2 years. Now, during our underwriting process, we're going to be looking at a global debt service coverage ratio of at least 1.0. And these are going to be collateral based as well. So being collateral based, the loan must be secured by a fixed asset, whether that's real estate, machinery, or equipment. If it's a working capital request, it's going to need to be secured by collateral as well. Real estate is going to be our strongest collateral, and then equipment can be used on a case by case as well, determined by underwriting. If we're using equipment as collateral, we're going to be looking at useful life, how old the equipment is, the value of the equipment. So that's all going to be determined during the underwriting process. As far as guarantees, we're going to be looking at personal guarantees for all individuals or entities with at least 10% or more ownership in the business. And that's going to be a personal guarantee for the full loan duration. And at least one personal guarantor must have at least a 650 credit score. Now to touch base on the loan use and terms. First, starting with real estate. Real estate is going to be eligible for a loan request. That's going to be anywhere from 100,000 up to 1.5 million maximum loan amount. This needs to be owner occupied commercial property, and it needs to be owner occupied by at least 51%. We can go up to a loan to value of 100% and loan terms up to 30 years, which is all going to be determined during the underwriting process. For equipment requests, it's also going to be 100,000 to 1.5 million. We're going to be looking at up to 90% LTV for the equipment purchase, meaning you're going to be looking at least 10% down for the equipment. And that's going to be financing hard costs only. So it's going to be excluding any soft costs such as any installation, taxes, delivery fees, warranties. It's going to be the hard costs only of the equipment up to 90% loan to value. Depending on the type of equipment, the useful life, We can go up to a max of 10-year terms on equipment. And as far as what won't be eligible, we're going to be looking at equipment, for example, that we not get a finance. A great example would be rolling stock, such as vehicles or anything like that. Working capital. Working capital is going to be for reoccurring operating expenses paid in your ordinary course of business. That's going to be a maximum of 500,000. So you can do working capital requests up to 100 to 500,000. And again, that needs to be secured by real estate. Some examples there are your monthly rent, payroll, any of your daily operating expenses that can fit under our working capital. As far as terms, we're going to be depending on the collateral that's going to be securing that request up to a maximum of 7-year term for working capital. Real estate is going to be our strongest source of collateral when it comes to a working capital request, but we can look at equipment on a case-by-case basis as well. Now, during our credit analysis, these loans are going to be submitted to underwriting, and they're going to do a full deep dive using EDA's risk rating model, just like our other loans as well. At the time of underwriting, they're going to determine really what the spread is, but the interest rate isn't locked until like right before closing. So the interest rates are based off the US Treasury or the floor of at least 1%, whichever is higher. But if we're basing it off the US Treasury rate during the underwriting analysis, they're going to add additional basis points for the credit risk and the type of term and use of the proceeds. So end of the day, during our underwriting analysis, they will determine the risk analysis and add basis points for credit risk. As far as being the lien holder, we ideally would like to be in first lien position, but depending on the collateral, if there is a senior lender, NJEDA will take a subordinate position to that lender. If there's no additional lender on that collateral, then EDA will be in first position as the sole lender. And as always, all approvals are subject to NJEDA's credit underwriting policy. And next slide, please. So diving a little bit more for the working capital requests, these are some great examples on what could be eligible for your working capital request. Not limited to, but future lease payments for the property that's tied to the application and to your NJCRC cannabis license. Future employee payroll, whether you're hiring new employees or supporting your current employees. Any future employee training, so covering costs to train your NJ employees. Future professional services, whether that's accounting, human resources, business planning, marketing, website creation, and any future utility bills tied to the property. Keep in mind any of the requests for the loan, the proceeds has to be for the New Jersey location that's tied to the license. So any of the proceeds would not be eligible to any, for example, out-of-state locations. Now, some ineligible uses for working capital, some prime examples, not limited to, but some ineligible working capital requests would be controlled inventory, any construction or renovation, purchase of land, any sort of demolition costs, any sort of purchase or lease of rolling stock, like a vehicle, payments or distributions to any associates of the borrower, payment of any fines, penalties, state, federal taxes, real estate taxes, or any costs associated with added or special assessments, any sort of personal non-business obligations or costs incurred by related entities, any sort of owner payments, salaries, travel, entertainment, expenses for facilities outside of New Jersey, where that's completely unrelated to the applicant, distributions or return on capital, or any sort of legal expenses associated with litigation involving NJ, local New Jersey government, or any other relating to regulatory or criminal matter. Next slide, please. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pass this off to our senior product officer, Richard. He's going to walk everybody through the application process, the fee structure, some additional requirements when the application opens again. He's also going to walk everybody through step by step of the application process, kind of showing screenshots of what the application is going to look like when it opens on Monday. So this way, again, this is going to be uploaded directly to our website. So if anybody needs to revert back to it, they can. But I'll go ahead, I'll pass it off to Richard. And I just want to remind everybody again, feel free to drop any questions here in the Q&A, and we'll answer any questions as we move along. But Richard, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. Good morning, everybody. Through this next section, I'm going to explain the application process from start to finish. And you'll hear me say this a lot. Please, when looking to apply, use the business banking at NJEDA.gov email address for any questions or concerns while going through the process. But we'll start with the physical launch date scheduled for April 20th at 10 a.m. through our website. And again, feel free to actually go through the application checklist where you can see what's needed to gather the checklist before talking to one of the business representatives at the state. But that is available to go ahead and start to gather the required documentation. Applications are accepted on a rolling first come, first served basis up to 3 years or when the funds are exhausted. It's reviewed once the complete application and all required documents are submitted. And then NJEDA provides a 10-day cure period to address missing or incomplete information. Some of the key application requirements: the loan proceeds must be solely used to support NJ-based licensed operations. This is a big factor. So if you do have locations outside of New Jersey, all loan proceeds must actually be used to support the NJ-based licensed operations. Applications must certify eligible use of the funds at the time of application, and then consent required for NJCRC license verification during and after underwriting. And then corporate guarantors, if applicable, must fully disclosed and documented. Going on to the fee section, so there is a $500 non-refundable application fee due at the time of submission. So again, I will reiterate that talking to a NJEDA business development officer before applying will help you understand the eligibility requirements, to see if it's eligible, and to make sure that when paying that fee, the eligibility requirements are met at the time of application. After application, there is a 0.875% commitment fee, and that is due upon the acceptance of the term sheet. And then also there's a 0.875% closing fee due at the loan closing. And then for our loan products, there is no prepayment penalty, and then all program fees are non-refundable. And then additional requirements: so prevailing wage, public works contract registration, and affirmative action may apply. And then real estate holding companies may be required as co-applicants for real estate purchases. All right, so the review process and approval from start to finish. So applicants will go through several stages of the review where NJEDA staff will be communicating with applicants throughout the application process. So initial consultation. So program officers conduct eligibility reviews for applicant readiness and consultation. Again, that can be also inquired by business banking at njeda.gov. Once the consultation and application, there is a comprehensive credit analysis. So it will go under underwriting review of financials, searches, and collateral reviewed. And then there is a risk rating set. Once it goes through credit analysis, it does go through approvals. So it is subject to the NJEDA credit underwriting policy. And once through approvals, it goes through our closing team through the commitment letter and due diligence. And that's where the preparation of loan documents and disbursement. And then post-closing, they monitor the loan performance modifications at the discretion of the NJEDA, and NJEDA legal confirm applicants NJCRC is in good standing annually. Okay, so this is actually going through after you meet with a NJEDA business development officer, going through the application itself. So the link below is where you could find the application center through our webpage. That will list a specific NJEDA program you're interested in, and then going to the general login page at the login below. And then if it's the first time you're using the portal to apply on an NJEDA product, you will click the register tab listed towards the top of the screen. And then if you do not have your login information, click on the Forgot Password Username button and then follow the instructions to be able to reset. They will send you an email with reset information. Your username will be included in the email you receive, so please be sure to use your correct username when you sign in. Okay. If your email is recognized by the application portal, so if you do attempt to register with the application center, but your email address is already in the system, you will receive a pop-up notice saying that you will need to send yourself an invitation code to access your account, and then you can begin the process by clicking the blue OK. Okay, and then for any new users, so you would enter your email after clicking the register. Enter your email, create your username, which can be your email and desired password, and then follow the password prompt. So it must be containing characters from at least 3 of the following 4 classes, so uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and then non-special characters. And then once information is filled in, then you'll be able to register to continue the application. And then after registering your email, this will take you to the portal to create your profile. Again, as requested, you'll see the slots there to make sure to enter your information to make sure it's correct. And then this is critical in the process because this will be the email address that the NJEDA contacts for your business. So any updates as well, you'll be able to click update. Once your profile information is complete and you confirm your email address, you will have an option to confirm your email. An email address will be sent to the email address listed. And then once you go to your email, just follow the instructions within the email. And then this is crucial as well because in order to fully access the application on the portal, your email must be confirmed before proceeding. Okay, so once you register your account and you're in the system, here is where you're going to be able to select your program. You'll go to the Application Center homepage. They'll have 2 options at the bottom of the page. So you will select the NJEDA programs button to see the full list of active NJEDA programs. And then on the next page, you'll see the program you wish to apply for. And as you can see from the arrow, the programs are not listed in alphabetical order, so please read through the entire list. And then you'll see the NJ leaf at the bottom right corner. Okay. And then here's where you start the application. Please be sure to read through the information on the page because there is critical information that you want to review before proceeding. And then once you're ready and reviewed the information above, then you're going to go to the Create New Application to begin. And then from here, it's going to prompt you to see if English is your primary language. If it is, provide yes. And then if no, you'd be able to select the language of your choosing, and then we'd be able to set up a consultation to make sure that we have an interpreter in your native language for our meeting. And then here is going to be the primary point of contact. So right here, we're going to find where the contact information for your primary point of contact for the application. And then please ensure that the email provided is the correct email because this will be the email that we would be following up with from our team to the applicant. Okay. And then here's a list of the primary point of contact, what it would look like, and the checklist of how to provide. So make sure we're putting in our correct phone number and then checking the box to make sure that the primary point of contact is the CEO. If it is not, it'll prompt you to the next page to go over following information. Okay. So if the primary point of contact is not an authorized representative, this is the stage where you'll be asked to fill out the contact information for the authorized representative on the actual application. And then contact information is needed for the applicant's CEO, owner, or equivalent. So if the primary point of contact is not the CEO, owner, or equivalent, this page will appear. And then here's where you're able to enter the information of the owner status of the company. Okay. And then this is a consultant information. So this is not mandatory, but this is something you would fill out if you use consultants for support on your NJEDA applications. And then it would say, are you the applicant company using a consultant to assist your application? And then if yes, this is where you would go into fill out the information of who you were using. And then the next slide, we would ask to put your legal counsel designation. Again, it's not mandatory. However, it is helpful for the application and award purposes for the NJEDA to have basic contact information for your legal counsel if you have one designated at the time of your application. Here is the next slide to put your accountant information. Again, this slide is also not mandatory, but it is helpful to the application process as well. And then here is where you would be entering your principal bank contact. This would be the general banking relationship that you have at your institute. And then from there, to the best of your knowledge, fill in who do you work with directly. That way we can have that information on file. Okay, this is some of the main parts of the application. So again, dating back, it is a mandatory field in the application to checkpoint who you are working with from the NJEDA Business Banking Officer team. So as stated before, the importance of utilizing the business banking at njeda.gov for any intake forms or questions you may have. This will get you directly in touch with one of our business banking officers and then go through the initial process to make sure the eligibility requirements are met. And on this screen is the most important because you would have to get through a yes and then select directly who you've been working with the NJEDA business banking team. The next important piece of this page is if this purchase is a refinance of real estate. So if you're purchasing or refinancing real estate, this is where you would select if you're working with a real estate holding company and then adding the co-applicants. And then below, you would actually look what recreational use license that your entity possesses. And then from there, you'll be able to add in your NJCRC annual license. All right, so this next page where you enter in the organization information. So you'd go over your legal business name, entity type, the date established. Here's where you'd be prompted to enter in your formation documents. So if you're sole proprietor, LLC, corporations or nonprofits, those all have individual requirements of what to provide. From there, you would enter in your federal tax identification number, your NAICS code, your short organization description, your organizational phone number and website, and then here you'll be prompted to present your NJ tax clearance certificate. This is a continuation of the field of the applicant organization. So if you have previously received NJEDA assistance, details of that funding is required to be included in a part of the application. So certification is also required that the applicant is not in default with any of the state of New Jersey programs. Again, this is another example of why to make sure that you sit down with the business banking officer before proceeding. That way we can look and review of all the eligibility requirements before applying. This screen, you'll be prompted to plug in your annual revenue. Right there, you'll add the files for your tax returns, your profit and loss and balance sheets, your business schedule debt form, and then your accounts receivable and aging. And then here is where does the applicant organization have ownership in any other business that has a pending or approved loan under the NJ LEAP pilot loan program? And then there's where you'll be prompted to select yes or no for that answer. Okay, this next section is deeply involved for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So in this section, we'd like to know more information about the diversity organization. So answers have no impact on eligibility for assistance, and providing information is completely optional to be used for tracking purposes only. Within these questions, prefer not the answer can be selected in that case, or if the question is not applicable to your organization. Okay, and then for here, we would need information for all owners that are 10% or more ownership interest in the organization. So from here, we would look to see for your operating agreement, if LLC, bylaws for corporations, just to make sure how the organization structure is broken down. And then from there, you'd be prompted to enter the information personally of all owners that own 10% or more ownership interest in the organization. And then this is the next place where you'll be prompted if you checked yes for real estate purchase or refinance. And then if that purchase or refinance involves a real estate holding company, here's where you'll be prompted to add the co-applicant with the real estate holding company, and then fill out all the required documentation of the organization, the certification, the state filings, and then the basic information of the address for the company below. This is the next page in and around the where you would put the information of the real estate holding company. Very similar to the operating company, but again, the required forms, formation documents to make sure that we have that tax clearance certificate before application, and then to answer the general questions that go along with the holding company itself. And again, it would still, this is the third slide on filling out the documentation. As you can see from there, from your operating company, you'll have a business schedule of debt as well as a real estate holding. So basically, all the documentation you need from the operating, you would still need on the real estate holding. And then there would be an option and additive to add to files at that time. So we can make sure our information is accurate when applying for the loan. And then the last slide would be where you would add all ownership. Again, for the real estate holding company as well as the operating, we do need to know all the information of personal ownership that has a 10% or more ownership interest in the real estate holding company itself. Okay, next slide is where we're going to add the information of the corporate guarantors. So any co-applicants, operating companies that are going to be guarantoring the loan, we would need all the similar fields of the business debt schedules, the tax clearance certificates, the formation documents, all the financials. And again, I'll say this, you hear it a lot of times, making sure that we meet with the business development officer before applying to make sure that the information is gathered before the application will only help streamline the process itself, and to make sure that we have everything going into the application. From here, very similar to the other slides, as you can see, for each guarantor, each entity, we'd be making sure that we have the required documentation fields to fill out. This next slide is very important. This is going to where we add the project location for the loan. This is going to be able to prompt you to add the location of the project site. And then here is where previously for one employee for every $65,000 of NJEDA lendable dollars, this is where you would be able to prompt the information provided. So where you would please list the number of permanent New Jersey full-time jobs to be created within the next 24 months tied to the financing request. And then you would add part-time jobs as well as full-time. And then you would also have a slot for 1099 jobs as well. And then here you would fill out the information of the recreational cannabis license to operate. And then from there, we would ask that you would provide the your most previous payroll reporting, your WR-30, or the general payroll reporting that you have for the business. Here is the breakdown of how you would put in the ad location. So as before, as we mentioned, there can be locations outside of the state of New Jersey. Just to reiterate, the funding for the loan has to go to the location inside the state of New Jersey. And then here is where you can depict the changes of your New Jersey location, the primary for the project site, and then as well any locations that you have for the business outside of New Jersey. You'd be prompted to plug in at this time as well. Here is where you would provide a narrative of the project description. So this information just kind of breaks down why you're applying for the loan, the purpose, and really just to kind of depict the business in itself. So if we are renewal terms, construction or expansion plans, here's where you'd put that in at this time. Then any information as well that you wanted to be known at the time of applying. This is the port where you would plug in your project description of the funding and what it's going to be used for. And then, will the New Jersey project facility be occupied or used by any other party other than the applicant, organization, or real estate holding company? This is where you would plug in your yes or no to that, and then it'll prompt you to be able to provide the names of the parties itself. And then any lease agreements or licensing for the loan, here's the time they'll give you a chance to upload the documentation. The next piece of it is you're going to break down the project cost. So we're going to look from a total project of what it would cost, and then here's where we'd add in the space of your total project, and and then where the actual project costs are coming from. And then here's where you'd be able to add in where you're looking for the NJEDA to contribute to that specific project. And then here is where you'd actually use the sources of funding. And then that would kind of break down of your project, what the funding would be used for. Again, it is imperative walking through with the business development officer. They can help you fill this information out to the best of your ability, just making sure that you going in from the application is accurate. And then again, here's where you'll certify that will any portion of the requested NJEDA funds be used to support business operations conducted outside New Jersey. So here's where you would make sure that there's going to ask you if those proceeds will, and again, making sure that eligibility is met is crucial, and making sure the accuracy of the application. And then, as you know, all loans for construction and project costs are subject to prevailing wage, and then just make sure they're not going in. So again, anything over $1,999 in cost of labor will be subject going in. So kind of knowing your project for the loan, knowing the cost that's going to create going into the loan process will help you depict knowing if prevailing wage would apply in the scenarios. Okay, and then this is where the applicant representation comes in. So then is the individual filling out this application employed by the entity that is applying for the program? And then you would place yes or no. And then it would ask if the individual filling out the application is one of the following. And then from there, you would make the list if it does check yes. And then the next slide is please indicate which of the following best describes the individual filling out this application. And then that drop down, you'd be able to select the representative applying for the loan itself. At the bottom, this is crucial. So if a owner, CEO, authorized representative is not filling out the loan, you would have to manually submit the legal questionnaire, certification of non-involvement in prohibited activities in Russia or Belarus forms, the certification of application or program-specific certifications. If you are a owner of 10% or more ownership interest going in, you'd be able to actually fill this out at the time of application. So knowing if you have someone fill in the application that's not an owner, these forms would have to be manually filled out and submitted. Here is a preview of the legal questionnaire. Please, in this, make sure that we're reading the entire legal questionnaire before answering the questions. There is going to be questions asked that pertain to the business. So reading it in full is crucial to the accuracy of the application. So please, in this section, applicants are required to answer background questions pertaining to any causes that may lead to the debarment, disqualification, or suspension from eligibility. Additionally, applicants are required to identify any affiliate entities, and then there are two main types of affiliates. So the first one, the applicants must identify any individuals or entities that hold a 30% or more ownership in the applicant. And then second, applicants must identify any individual or entity where the applicant holds a 30% or more interest and are either named in the application or agreement or receive a direct benefit from the financing, incentive, or any other agreement, NJEDA. And then, so again, to my point, applicants should take their time and make sure they read this section carefully. And then here's a continuation of a brief overview of what the legal questionnaire would look like. And then again, reiterating the point of making sure to read this into its entirety. Okay, this is the what it looks like for the certification of the non-involvement in prohibited activities in Russia or Belarus. And then as in required the NJSA, this section we will be collecting the certification of non-involvement in the prohibited activities in Russia or Belarus and ensuring that the applicant is not listed on the OFAC blocked persons list. So for all forms, please make sure that we are reading in entirety and then answering it to the best of our ability. Here is a certification of application. At this time, you're certifying and warranting that everything provided is accurate to the best of your knowledge. And then your understanding of such information is willfully false, you are subject to criminal prosecution under the NJSA 2C28-2 and civil action by the NJEDA, which may at its option terminates financial assistance, and then make sure that we were reading the remainder of the questions before certifying the application and going through submission. Here is a additional breakdown of the program-specific application certification that's directly related to the program itself. At this time, this is where you'd be certifying that all the cannabis licenses through the NJCRC are going to be in good standing throughout the time of the application and throughout the term of the loan itself. And then last but not least, and I'll say it for the last time, is making sure that we reach out to a business banking development officer at businessbanking@njeda.gov for any questions, because there is a $500 non-refundable application fee. And we do want to make sure that before applying, that basic eligibility is met before going through this process. And then this little payment in detail. At this time, it is by credit card, debit card only for the application fee to be paid. And then from here, here's where you'll be able to fill out the information to process the fee payment. And then on the last slide, you'll be electronically signing. So pursuant to written policy, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority allows documents to be signed electronically, and hereby is agrees to be bounded by such electronic signatures, so that you be confirming that you as signatory to this document also agree or bound by electronic signatures. And then from there, you would agree to the signature that you're an authorized signer for the organization, and then you'd go through the submit application at the bottom. Once submitting the application, make sure that you receive the confirmation. If you do not receive a confirmation, please reach out to the team. And then, of course, for any questions involved in the application, please email businessbanking@njeda.gov to one, get assigned an officer, and two, make sure that the application runs smoothly. Okay. So then here is the website for the nja.gov, nj.leaf for more information. And again, here is the information of the business banking NJEDA.gov team. And Ryan, I don't know if time prevails, if we're able to look for any questions on our side.
Yeah, thanks so much, Rich. Amazing. See a few questions coming in. Working on getting these answered as we speak. I just want to reiterate again, we're here to help. Our entire business banking team is ready to go for everybody that's interested in the program. Email business banking. We'll set up a one-on-one consultation with any business owner looking to apply. We'll walk you through. We can hop on a Zoom call together, walk you through the eligibility requirements, walk you through the application. Just want to reiterate again, we are here to help and more than happy to set up a one-on-one consultation with anybody.
Thank you, Ryan and Richard. I would again just reiterate to reach out to us at business banking at njeda.gov so that you can meet with us, so that we can review your project, get to know you, get to know your business as well. During that time, we also, before you apply, we're happy to look at your financials just to truly understand whether or not this program will be a good fit for you before you go on and pay the fee. So definitely get something set up with us. A lot of the questions in the Q&A chat were around guarantors. So if the applicant or co-applicant, which would be a real estate holding company, has owners owning 10% or more of the entity, then those owners, whether it's an individual or corporate entity, a trust or estate, would need to guarantee the loan. And the application will prompt you to enter that information. But if at any point, I know we walked through the application in great detail, but if at any point you get stuck, you can always reach out to us through our email, through our chat box as well, and we're happy to walk you through that. So with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the presentation.